crafters to my channel, Fun Stuff Crafts, where I hope to inspire you to want to make things. So if you've been following me on my blog, I posted 10 ways that I get inspired. One of those ways is I love to visit my local thrift stores. So last time I was at Habitat for Humanity, I always go back and I look to see if they've got cupboard doors. So these are from a kitchen cabinet. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll take these and either paint or I'll put vinyl on them to make some signs. Today what I decided we would do is take that cupboard door and turn it into a chalkboard. So you can use this in your kitchen, you can use this numerous places to leave notes on it. So give me a few minutes to get my camera angle changed and we will get making. So the majority of my supplies I picked up at Walmart, starting out with chalkboard paint. And then I picked up some chalk paint. For this project, I used a white chalk paint, a peacock color, and then the wax. The other item you're going to need is either sandpaper or a sanding block, and a paint roller and a paint trough, and then a chalk paint brush, and some blue painter's tape. So once you get all of your supplies together, you want to prep your board. Now what I like to do is take a sanding block and just roughly go over the cupboard door. It really helps out to adhere the paint to stick to the door. And so I will, normally when I get these home from the store, I wipe them down very well, but I just like to put a little rough coat on there with the sandpaper or the sand block. As you can see here, I'm using a block. Sometimes I just feel that that's a little bit easier to do the sanding with. So doesn't have to be exact. I'm just trying to rough up the door just a little bit before I do the next step, which will be applying the chalkboard paint to the center of the board. Once I complete this sanding piece, I am going to take a cloth and wipe off all the remnants of the sanding that I have done, and then I'll be ready for our next step. The next step we're going to do is we are going to put on the chalkboard paint onto the center of the door. Now I've done it both ways. I've put it on, I've done the outside of the board first and the center first. And I kind of like doing the center part first. And so we're going to start out with the chalkboard paint. Now I like to use a roller for this. You could use a brush. And I don't always use painter's tape to tape off. This happens to be a raised door, so it's pretty easy to be able to feel where it is changing. And you can see I got a little bit on the side there, but I'm okay because I'm going to put a couple layers of paint on this. So it's up to you if you want to tape it off. But the whole idea with the chalkboard paint is you really want to get it on coated evenly. And you can see there I got a little bit of fuzz on there, so I'm just watching as I'm putting it on and just trying to smooth it out as best I can for this first coat. You are going to put 3 coats on of the chalkboard paint, and so I normally finish this layer, let it dry, and then I'll move on to the next layer. Now that I've got 3 coats of chalkboard paint, I am going to add in my Waverly white chalk. Now for this project, what I decided to do is I was going to put a white coat down as the base coat, and then you'll see in my future steps, I'm going to use that peacock color to put a top coat. And the idea with the bottom coat is when you want to sand down and make it look distressed, whatever you put for the bottom coat is what's going to show through. So I wanted to use the white to be this distressing part. And you can see once again I did not use the painter's tape for this base coat. I'm just being very careful. I'm able to feel where that raised part is. But by all means, if you want to use some painter's tape to block off the black, you definitely can to protect the chalkboard part. You'll see in a future step when I do put the peacock color on that I do block off the black. But right now I'm just easily going through and trying to fill in all the little crevices. And I love this chalk paintbrush that I got. I picked it up at Walmart where I got most of my supplies for this project. And so it works out really nice. It helps put on a smooth coat without leaving a lot of lines. So I'm just going to finish here putting on this first coat, and then we will move on to our next step. So the next step here is to put the top coat on, but I need to tape off where the chalkboard paint is. So I'm just fast forwarding through this. Basically all I'm doing is taking my painter's tape and I'm applying it just on the square of where the chalkboard paint is, just to protect it. I'm getting ready for that top coat that we're going to put on. So you can just see I'm doing it very carefully and just making sure everything is covered, getting ready for our next step, which is our top coat. So now that I've got it all taped off, I am going to add my peacock color to it, and I call it actually a teal color, but I'm going to put that top coat on and just very carefully apply that. I like to put 2 coats on of the top coat, so you want to make sure that your coats are dry in between, but you just want to cover wherever you put the white, because what we're going to do in our next step is once it's all dry, we're going to do the distressing step, which will be taking the sandpaper to sand off some of this teal color. So just make sure that you get it completely covered. The white paint should not be showing through at all, so just go ahead and get that part done. Once we have it totally covered, we will move on to our next step. So now while the paint is still wet, I'm going to remove my painter's tape, and then I am going to let this layer completely dry before we go on to the next step. So now comes the step of distressing. You can do this as much or as little as you want. One of the things I like about these covered doors is they have that finish on them, or that straight edge going around, and you can see I'm taking the sandpaper, and that's where I kind of like to start with the distressing, is just to show, and you can see the white paint is starting to show through. And then I am just in different areas, I am just rubbing the sandpaper along. And like I say, this is entirely up to you as to how much you would like to distress and have that paint come through. It just gives it that weathered look. And so I just use the sandpaper and just picking different areas that I think would look nice, distressed out a little bit. I do like to get the edges of the door just to give it that nice look, but you do what you want to do on this step. This next step that we're going to do is to put a clear wax coating over the top of our chalk paint. Now this is not a step you have to do, but I have found in working with chalk paint that it provides a really nice finish and it helps protect the paint. So I'm just using my same brush that I had used, and I'm putting a layer on, and then what you do is you actually take a clear cloth or a cloth and you wipe off the wax finish. So you're really almost buffing. When you think about using wax, you're actually buffing it into the finish. And that's what I'm going to do here as soon as I get a nice layer on. You don't need to do an overabundance of the wax, but you do want to put a solid layer on, and then we will be wiping it off. So I'm just trying to get into all the crevices here, and then I am going to grab a rag, and we're just going to start buffing it. And basically you're almost wiping off the finish, or wiping off the wax. You don't want any excess on there, and so we're just going to wipe it really good into the finish. And then we're going to let it dry, and then we'll have one more step to have this project complete, but we're just about there. And our final step that you want to do is you want to condition the chalkboard. So I'm just taking a piece of white chalk, and I am just going to rub all over the chalkboard paint. And you want to take this step to give your chalkboard a good conditioning. And so I'm just going to rub it all over, get a good layer of chalk on here. And then I will take a rag and I will wipe off my chalkboard. And then we have completed our project. So it's time now for you to put a fun little saying on it. And I would caution you on using water on your chalkboard part until about 3 days. You want a good conditioning on the chalkboard before you use water to clean it off. So here we are. I'm just putting a cute little upcycle saying on it, and we have completed our project. So thanks again for joining me on my channel. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial of turning a kitchen cabinet into, or a kitchen cabinet door into, a fun upcycled project. So if you liked what you saw today, please click the button below and subscribe to my channel. And thanks so much for joining me at Fun Stuff Crafts.